Hello everyone. So for today, we're gonna be discussing about the drafting conventions that are applied in your design drawings or construction drawings. So as you all remember, um, what we have or what you have experienced in your prelims and midterms are all parts of the basics. So with this one, we're gonna be diving a bit deeper on the major methods or format that you're going to be using in your future activities. So our expected outcomes or outputs will be application of the orthographic and axonometric projections, the line values, the lettering, dimensioning in creating your plans, roof plans, elevations, and sections. So, um, first, there are some key terms that you will be encountering or that we will be encountering in this discussion. So here are some of them, and some of them might be familiar and some of them might be new for you. So again, we have our line as the fundamental tool of communication. So this is because of the line values that we have and the line types. So with this, we are able to give definition to each details, each drawings, or because of what we all or how we perceive those meanings of each lines. They serve as symbol to us that make us able to read plans better and understand them better. So we have our line weights and the line types, and these lines can be drawn in different ways, maybe long, short, straight, curve, or freehand in technical drafting, maybe in different orientations, and some are hatching and some are patterns. So one of the most important thing you have to 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 be doing with these lines is to make sure that the quality is consistent and correct. So what do we mean by the quality? So in conventional or in old ways, since there's no computer during the earlier times and everything is drawn manually, so it is very important to always use the color black, especially in producing some blueprints, because some other ink colors might not be caught in the copying machine. Then also your line thickness must always be consistent, so you can achieve that by having those guidelines, patterns, and you always or you must have your lines ready, or you must have you must pinpoint the end-to-end points of each lines that you are going to be drawing. So aside from that, because of this quality, it conveys clear message, clear detail, and it makes, or it may be helpful for you to make it neat, make it very understandable. Then another thing about quality is that the corners or the joinery of each line. So you have to make sure that your lines are, or your edges and corners are well connected. So you can achieve that by not rushing your not rushing when you're inking your lines. So when you're finalizing those lines, it gives a lot of difference when you have those connected and not connected. Then the line weight. So it is a common knowledge that the thicker the line is, it engages the reader's eye first. So it means that the most, or depending on the detail you are producing. So for example, on a drawing or on a floor plan, since it is a floor plan, you have to make sure that the walls have thicker lines in order to um, give a sense of boundary for each spaces. Then the secondary details are the openings, which are, or the fenestrations, which are the doors and windows. So they're a bit thicker, but not as thick as the walls. Then the last ones are the furnitures, the line modules, the guidelines, the fonts or the text and numbers, the dimension lines. So it's like creating a hierarchy of those important details you have to be interpreting in each drawings. So for our scaling, or for our line thickness, we'll be moving forward. So for those line thickness, we have our border line, or which also have our title block. So the border line is usually at 0.8 as thinnest tech pen point, up to 2 millimeters, which the 2 millimeters can be found or can be used through a calligraphy pen if you have one. So it gives better clarity on the space within the paper, that, or within a frame, or it gives framing that gives a clear space for your details to be drawn. Then the next one are for the walls, or the outlines, or the perimeter of each object, which are from 0.5 to 0.8. So we're usually using the 0.5 for the walls, or for our main objects on our previous activities. But with this one, you have to be creative in using this point types. So you may use 0.5 to 0.8 in order to give strength on each lines that you're gonna be producing, or you're gonna be detailing. So again, 0.5 to 0.8 for walls or other perimeter areas. So we'll have an example with this one. For the floor plan, we usually use 0.5 on the thicker ones. Then, or the walls, I mean. So for the walls, we have 0.5. Then the other details will be varying from 0.2 to 0.4, which are giving support details with the furnitures, I mean, the hatches or the patterns that can be used in order, or for the tiles, for example, or for this lanai and for this counter. So instead of using a thicker line, you're gonna have to be using a light line. Then next, for our doors and windows. So for example, you used 0.5 on the walls, you may use 0.4 for the doors and windows. Then for the other main furnitures such as the bed, the dining table, or the furnitures that define each spaces or majorly defining each space, you have to use medium lines. Then for the dimensions and guidelines and other grid lines, so for the modules or the tags that we call, we're gonna be using light lines, so that varies from point 1 to point 2. So next we have the medium lines, so from point 3 to point 4. These are the secondary objects, so again that defines each space, that may define each space, and that are kind of important for the detail but must not distract the main details that you are conveying for the presentation of your drawing. So for example, with this elevation, so for the boundaries of this drawing, you're gonna have to use thick or solid solid lines, which may vary from 0.5 to 0.8. So for example, for this one, you're gonna have to use 0.8 for the outline, then 0.5 for the major division of each space. Then for the windows or the other fenestration details, the windows and doors, and also this grills, you're gonna have to use a medium line weight in order to create to support the importance of the information you have to draw. Then for the hatches, the other patterns, this you can use lighter lines. And as you practice this one, you're gonna see a neat presentation that gives a different appeal on your full drawing. So again, for example, for the bold lines and medium lines, so as you can see, we have thicker lines on the outline of the roof and under the gutter or the eaves, then again on the walls. Then since this kind of give wall division, so or this kind of is a section of or from the offset, so the walls and the steps on the easements are thicker, so it gives division of each spaces or each important details that you have to be looking at. So as you can see on the rear part, you barely notice that there is a carport like or a space that is in front, so we can assume that this is a rear elevation. Then the light lines, which are from point 1 to point 2. So this is basically the best line weight to be used for filling in the details. So it gives, or it is easier to draw these patterns because of this. It's easier to give emphasis on each detail. So it does not mean that it is a light line, that it is hard to see. It just diverts your, or each line weights diverts your attention but within each boundaries, it is very important for this light lines to be used in order to see the details better. So as we go back to our previous figure, so this is usually used in letterings, um, dimensions, guidelines, section lines, other usual other lines except for the or depending on how you give importance to those lines or details. But this is basically a general used line weight for other for detailing important parts of the drawing. So we have our line types next. So we have the solid line, which is our particular line type to our that is used in most of our um, most of our figures. So a solid line indicates the visible objects in plan. So visible basically means or defines as physical items outline. So this may be the walls, the doors, porches, patios, perimeters, other details, maybe the tiles, the patterns, and etc. So again, object lines have a hierarchy of relative weight. So for instance, walls are thicker than doors, but then doors are thicker than the swing patterns. So these are the swing, then the door itself. Then some furnitures are thicker than the other, or some fixtures are thicker than the other, depending on the importance of each detail on a space. Then some module lines may needed to be thicker in order to give importance in it, or in order for it to be seen very well. For example, with these section lines, so they are a bit thicker than the usual, since some um, since lines are mostly overlapping. So in order to give importance with this line, they made it thicker with this one. So with this special lines that we used, or for special details, you have to consult your design instructor to clarify which thickness to use for them, or for you to give clarification on the detail you have to be producing. So next we have the hidden line, or the lines that the hidden line, or it defines the items or the objects that are not usually visible in front of the surface of the drawing. So these are some lines that may be visible from the rear part of an object, or the bottom part of an object, that is seen from, or that is not seen from the surface you are drawing. So we usually have 4 planes in our drawings, which are the different or I mean, for elevation, we have our 4 planes. So the front, left, right, and rear. Then for the plans, the top and bottom, we don't usually use the bottom detail, because, or it is especially used for small objects, or those small objects are furnitures, some decorations that, or ornaments that you want to use, or you want to detail. So at some point, this hidden line is used to give an importance on a detail beneath or behind the object or the space you want to be seen. So for example, we have our overhead cabinets. So in order for us to give detail on that overhead cabinet, you have to use a hidden line that hidden line with a lettering of that object, or label it, for example, that overhead cabinet, or maybe a high closet, or when you terminate from the cutting plane of a staircase. So that are those are some of the instances you're gonna be using the hidden line. Again, hidden line and dash line are mostly the same. It kind of depends on the scaling of each line that you're gonna be using. So this is kind of based on your own discretion for the length of each line. Then we have our movement, ghost, or phantom line. So phantom line usually gives or implies direction. So this is usually used as a thick line for property boundaries, or also used as lines for some sections or some details, some cutting planes, some grid lines or guidelines that you are detailing. So for example, on a door swing, you may use it, or you may use this line type, or in cabinets, the positioning of each hinge, or if it is a drawer, the direction where it is gonna be consuming space. Then we have our leader line that implies a certain detail and with a note. So it may be drawn as a straight horizontal line, or with diagonal, or a spline. So you have to make sure that if you're gonna be using a curved line or a curved one, you're not just doing it in freehand. You must have at least a protractor or a template, or especially a French curve. Then the break line that gives extension or cuts a detail that is repetitive in a longitudinal manner. So it gives or it terminates a detail, or it extends a detail. Then the center line, so a long line, then a dash, a long line, and a dash, and a long. So this is used usually for sections, or indicating the center of each object or a plan or a space. So basically gives symmetrical proportion of each object. Then our section line is like a phantom line. So some sections are used for the whole plan, but some are used for a small detail or for a certain space. So that depends on the requirement of each construction drawing or plan you are gonna be producing. So by the way, the recommended line thickness are, or the pen thickness are indicated in each definition. So you may follow this once, or um, or you may base them, or you may use thickness based on the importance of each detail. Then we have our dimension lines, usually light lines. So it is very important to be consistent. So consistency meaning that must have the same symbol at um, all sides. Then the text must always be above the line, not under the line. Then always use consistent decimal points. Then position it in center. It must have a space from the object and the line itself. Then each font must also have a space before the dimension line. Then the dimension stacking is that, or in each side, you must always base the dimensions on the nearest detail that you are going to be measuring. So for example, you're not gonna put a dimension in this portion because it is very far from the reference point, or otherwise you're gonna be producing a line that is kind of an eyesore from this side. Then the stacking will be by each detail. So it is very important that each of or all sides are complete. So for example, even though you have a measurement on this whole part, you have to be measuring the portional part. But then again, since each portions are measured on this side, and it is very obvious that with this other side it has the same dimension, so you're not gonna be measuring it again on this side. So you have to be very careful in using or in measuring each details, but not being very repetitive. So what's lacking in this part is the whole dimension. Okay, so you may assess this one. So we have our firstly our visible lines, the solid lines for the walls, and usually our walls are hatched with black fill. Then we have our extension lines from the dimensions, our leader lines, our fenestrations or openings, then each of the details that are provided. So for example, this one has a rock. Then aside from that, the elevation marker. So this will be depending on the requirement. We don't usually use the elevation marker, but always remember to have the right labels and details. So one of the most important is the orientation. So you have to orient the plan based on the straight edge. Then you have to orient, or you have to give the exact orientation of each or its exact orientation from the vicinity. Then the labels, it always must have the right label, the right title, then the right scaling. Then we have our tag. So for example, this is the first drawing on this paper, so we're gonna have to be showing one, then the page number. So page number is indicated based on the details. So for this one, it is, um, for example, it is sheet A1. So you're gonna be writing A1 in this one. So for the lettering, it always must be um, presentable. Then right height, right composition in each space. So aside from drawing all these details, you must indicate, or you must compose each of the details very well on the drawing or on the paper. So you have to be arranging each titles on a proper manner. Then the tags or the symbols that are supporting each fonts must be drawn very well. Then we have our um, we have our proper height for each of the fonts. So for the major um, text or the general details must be 4 mm. Then for the title block, main on the main details must be 8 to 10 mm. Then for the subtitles, for that is, for example, the date, the section, your section, the subject, um, the other details or description for each um, parts of the title block. So 6 to 8 mm. You always must have to use the same thickness of pen in order to give consistent look on the detail. So these are some of the sample tags that you can use. So for example, for this plan, let's say this is the number, the fourth drawing on the page. So you're gonna be writing the number of the detail. Then the page number is A2, which means the second page. Then um, this arrow usually indicates maybe the orientation. You can use that, or usually in the section reference. So for example, you're gonna be cutting a detail from that portion. You're gonna be showing this side, so it indicates that you're gonna be making a section or an elevation from this plane. Next, the marker. So as you can see with this detail, the wall is thicker, then the door opening or the door itself is a bit at a medium line weight. Then this is how you how you how you measure each of the portions of the space or the detail. But then our tags and fonts, you must always have your markers and tags very well. So for the presentation, how do we go for this one? So you must have an effective presentation for each of the drawings. So how do you make it presentable? So first is it must be clear and must be designed with intent. So our purpose is to communicate through lines. So you have to be using the proper line weights, the line types, and proper labels, titles, and notes for each of the drawing you have or you are gonna be showing. Then efficiency, you have to be utilizing the this, first of all, the drawing space very well. You have to place each of the details very well with proper arrangement in order to give order on what do they have to see first, what do they have to see next, and what is the least important. But it doesn't mean, or always make sure that each of the details you're going to be drawing on that certain page is related. So relation of each detail, then purpose of each detail, then order and neatness. Then again, the next one is the clarity. So the clarity, or clarity means that you have to be prioritizing the necessary details in each drawing. So you must always remember that for some of the viewer of your presentation, they are not as knowledge as we are. So for your future clients and for your future plates as well, you must always treat it as if, or you must always make sure that your presentation is readable for any age. So treat it as if that an elementary student will be reading it, and he or she will be able to understand it very well. So prioritize in detailing, or prioritize in drawing only the important details. So eliminate the unintended distractions and figures that are not necessary, or that can be shown in a different page rather than showing everything in a single drawing or single plan. Then we have our elements. So we have our diagrams, the graphics, titles, and text, the dimensions, and must always have this sequence. So first, the graphic images, which are the drawings and the diagrams. Then graphic symbols, which are the north arrows or the orientation, the scale of the drawing itself. Then lastly, the letterings, which gives the titles, the legends, text, dimensions. So again, for the drawings, this or all of this has the line values and line types to be used, and you have to be using them properly, utilizing each of this format properly. Then aside from that, again, the layout of each detail, the positioning, the spacing in between of each detail, what are the important details to be shown on that page. Do not be hesitant to use another page if it, or if you really want to convey a different detail, unless your instructor will only require a certain page that you must be placing it very well. So prioritize which are the important details you have to be producing or drawing first. Then check if the other details that you want to be including are supportive details or only a distraction. Then again, for each of the drawings, you must always have your grid line, your guidelines, your center lines, in order to give accuracy on the measurements that you have. This is also very helpful for you to indicate or to join each corner connections very well. Then the doors, we usually represent it in 90-degree appearance, but you may use 30, 60, 45 depending on the function of that certain door. So we have these operations. So for doors and windows, we have our fixed window, but also may represent awning. The awning one is the one that swings above. So you may indicate it through this one with a hidden line that shows this rectangular shape. Then we have our swing door or the casement, double acting doors, which are the double swing, the sliding door, the bifold doors. Then the pocket door is like a sliding door, but then you only have one operational side. Then the staircase, you have different patterns or different types, or a different way of detailing them. So some have a larger space, then thinner space. So some have a full landing, but then depending on the space, you may use those or divide each landing as well as steps or risers. So in breaking the staircase, usually it is 10 steps. This is because each of the step must be at 0.18 meter of height. Then, so 10 times 0.18 is 1.8. So the cutting plane for the plan is 1.8 meters. This is why on the hidden line, as we discussed earlier, in order for you to represent an overhead cabinet or overhead detail, you have to use a hidden line with a text noting or that indicates what that hidden line is. So you have to break the stairs from the first floor on the 10th step. Then on the for example, you have multiple floors, you're gonna be cutting, or you're just gonna be putting a brick line, but then you're gonna be using solid lines, since from the second floor, or let's move on to the third one. So on the third or the last floor, so for example, you have 2 floors, you're gonna be drafting the full or the entire staircase from that floor. So for example, with this one, we have our third floor, so all the steps will be drawn. Then from the second floor, since it is a general rule that from the 10th step you're gonna be drawing or breaking the staircase on the 10th step, then drawing all the down steps. Then from the first floor, you may indicate the staircase beyond the 10th step as hidden lines, or if you're gonna be putting a plan in this space, or if you're gonna be using this space as a storage or anything, you don't have to draw this hidden line, you just have to break it, then indicate what the space use is. So we have terms that we usually use. We have our tread and riser. So riser indicates the height, then the tread indicates the length of each step. Our general rule is to have 0.25 from tip to tip, but then we have our groove space here, or this avoids us from tripping on the stairs actually. Then our roof plan. So it is very important to indicate all the corners of the roof very well. You must also indicate if there is a skylight on a roof. And our roof plans are usually shown in detail at our site plan. Then for the floor plans, we only use hidden lines to indicate them because our main priority of to be presenting on a floor plan is the floor areas itself. So we have these parts of the roof. We have the hip line. So each of anywhere that um, indicates elevation is called hip line. Then we have our valley line in here because this certain plane is at the same height. So again, hip line. Then for the highest end of for the highest part of the roof, we have our ridge line. So we usually have our ridge roll in um, in the roof. So you may search about it. It is like a metal that connects each of this plane of roofing sheets. So that is the ridge roll. Then we have our eaves. So usually our eaves is 1 to 1.2 thick along with the gutter. So the gutter is usually 0.2 to 0.25. Then we have these types of roof. So we have the flat, lean-to, then gable or the dos agua, hip roof or the cuatro agua, then the cross gable, cross hip, then the gambrel roof is like a gable roof but with a different cut or double angled. Then the mansard roof is like a cuatro agua or hip roof with a secondary angle. So what if your roof has two levels? For example, with this one, you just have to indicate through hidden line what details are beneath this space, or if you have multiple floors, you just have to draw both of them with hidden lines. Or if it is on a site development plan, you have to be detailing both of them very well. Then if it is just on a plan, you may use hidden line with this one or just outline. You don't have to fully detail this because if you're indicating this floor, so you just have to detail the upper floor very well. Then requirements of the site development plan. So the site plan describes the location and orientation of the building or the complex on a plot of land. So whether it is an urban space or a rural place. So we have this, you have to be describing the site properly with the following. So recorded boundaries of each planned site. So this may be by, you can indicate it through a vicinity map and also the site development plan itself. And those boundaries can be used or are represented by phantom line. Then the topography of the terrain or the contours of the plane, I will discuss it later. Then the natural site features such as the existing trees, if there are waterscapes or water courses, if there are garden elements, there are hardscapes, landscapes. Then existing or proposed site construction, if it is a renovation or if it is a full or a new development. So we have the building footprint, or the so-called building footprint, that indicates the boundaries of a building. From included with this one are the sidewalks of the court itself or the building itself, the paths from the perimeter of the structure, and also all the constructible space, the parking areas, some road networks, some courts. Then the architectural structure in the immediate setting that impacts the plan itself. So, yun nga, yung mismong drawing na to, yung mismong the roof itself is indicated, the walls are indicated through hidden lines. If it is a firewalled wall, or it is not, if it has an easement or a setback, then legal constraints there, the setbacks, the right of way, the roads, then the existing or proposed utilities such as the drainage, the sewer lines, the water lines, then significant environmental forces or features. Also not indicated with this one is the neighboring spaces, so the road right of way from the road access itself, your adjacent lot or your neighboring lots. If what you just have to represent it through simple lines, don't have to detail them very well. Only within the site must be detailed very well. So you must include trees, landscapes, the roof itself. If you have fence, you must also indicate each with notes, such as some important types of trees, or important details, or important space that you are gonna be using for your design. So then some of the site development plans are oriented based on the north, or you may reorient the north indicator based on the exact north orientation. Then you must label each of the space very well. So as you can see from this example, each of the main areas are noted with a certain height of text. Then the supporting details are indicated with a smaller text, or smaller text height. Then we have our site. We have our sample of a multi-building with a parking space. Then we have our trees and shrubs symbols for landscaping. Take note of this one. You may also use reference from Google. There are a lot of materials that you can use. Then here's the topography that indicates each height of the portions of a land. So some of lands here in our areas are relatively flat, but some in the mountainous areas have this plan that are very useful in order for you to have an idea on what elevation of each land is. Then the elevation. This is the orthographic projection of an object based on a vertical plane that is parallel from the principal faces of the drawing. So unlike the plan that it is from above, so this is from the vertical planes. So aside from our usual what do I call this? Aside from our usual definition for this one, um, it indicates what the details are in the external appearance, or that is shown in the external appearance of the building. So you also have to illustrate the textures, the patterns of certain cladding, the material as well. You may indicate through a leader line with a proper label. So what materials are you going to be used? What finishes are you going to be used in a building? And um, what texture or type or color. Then for the dimensioning, you have to indicate or measure each of the dimensions from a window or door opening. And you have these tags that you will be familiarized soon. So the proper leveling, so the finish line, finish floor line, the ceiling height, the second floor line, the roof line, and the top of the roof. So those tags that you will be using sooner. So here's a sample of an elevation, because some of our site topographies have different height, so this is very useful. So as you can see from our previous sample, though this is a digital drawing, each hatches of this indicates that the texture of this certain material is rough. So here's our tags: not grade line or natural ground line. So the natural ground line is where the finished line or the tampered soil is. Then we also have our natural grade line, which is from the subsoil. So that indicates the original surface of the earth. Then we have our ground floor line, then ground floor ceiling line. It is very important to indicate that. Then so from the plan, we have our guidelines or grid lines that indicates each spaces. But then in our elevation, we have these connecting lines that indicates the height. So these are very useful both in elevations and sections. So you have to take note that this must be consistent, because if not, it means there's something wrong with the measurements that you did on your drawings. Then indicators. So you have these types or samples of finishes, types of masonry and concrete plastering. You can search about, or you can search on this on Google, and you may also read the architectural dictionary by DK Ching. There's a PDF version of that you can easily download in the internet. So for the wood, we have these panels with nut. Then for glass and glazing, there must always be horizontal line indicated, and so on and so forth. So for the section, basically like an elevation, but then you have a cutting plane. So that cutting plane indicates the interior of each space. So always remember to cut a certain plan. For example, this one. So cut a certain plan on a space that is very useful or visible, or that is very functional for each space. So I'll give you a sample of a certain project that I've been working on. So here it is. Um, so we have this ground floor plan and this section line. So we usually do our sections on a straight cut. However, with this one, I indicated details based on the space. So from the living area to the stairwell to the kitchen dining space or the kitchen space, then from the bedroom one, toilet and bath, and the powder room. So this is because if I cut it from the center or from the aisle, I'm only gonna fetch this portion of the bedroom. So it's not very good for detailing. So you may cut your plans this way. So the importance or the general rule is that you have to cut through a or from a major open space, and especially on a stairwell, in order for you to be able to see if each of the steps connect or where it's supposed to be cutting, or the height of the landing space. So for example, this is the longitudinal cutting plane. So I have this detailed. So from living area to the kitchen, the powder room, to the toilet and bath, and the bedroom. So for example, if you have 2 floors, you don't have to be copying the exact line. You may cut each of the spaces based on the plane. So for this one, I'm gonna be cutting it from the window for me to be detailing or to be cutting from the master's bedroom. So this space is I can either detail the toilet and bath or the walk-in closet side for the vanity space or a storage space. So there. Okay. Then again, we have this line reference. If you have, or if you're on an elevation, you always or you must connect these lines. So in each side, you have to put a detail of it. Okay. So for the section, basically gives an idea or detail of what is inside the space, if the heights are correct, if the structural details are, or in structural elements are properly connect, and the ceiling, the other lighting, and other stuff that relates with the height. You must always, or you must also hatch with a darker color, or the solid spaces or the interior spaces with the darker color, in order for you to give a tonal value or indicate that it is being cut inside. Then always remember that you will be using, or you may be detailing various sections of each plan. So you must have, or you must have patience in detailing this. This is one of the crucial details that you're gonna be encountering and you're gonna be doing. Then again, the section cut, or the cutting plane must always be where a major space is being detailed, not inside a wall. Then must be, if you have 2 floors, cut always cut on a stairwell. Then detail the interior space very well, but then smaller the prioritize the line weights as well. Hatch the walls and the insides of a certain, or I mean, cut hatch the inside of the wall or fill in with darker color. Then indicators again. So as you section a space or a certain portion, I haven't yet detailed this one, so you may hatch this portion with earth patterns since it is the ground. So maybe earth, rock, gravel, depending on what is the type of soil or what is this type of surface beneath that soil. Then again, the lettering heights. And that is also, be sure to keep all of this in mind. And for our major activities for finals, so we'll be coordinating with our or with your design plate. So each progress that you'll be submitting in your design must also be submitted according to the modules. So we have our modules. Right. Okay, so for your not yet. So for this 13th to 15th week, you're gonna be submitting your design works as well. Or let me check with this one. Okay. So there. We'll base our activities on your design design plates. So for this week, I'll be expecting you to send me a progress of, or yes, by Thursday, or based on your design date, you're gonna be submitting your floor plan from the whole week, from Monday to Saturday. So this will be open then. Then for the next week, you'll be submitting your site development plan and the roof plan. Then for the third week, you're gonna be submitting elevations and sections. So that will be your first activities for the finals. So make sure to keep all these formats in mind and reread this PDF. You may go back with this discussion anytime since this is uploaded. Okay, so have a good day and good luck.